Okay, so I've been told that we can start. Good morning and thank you all for coming. For those of you who have never met me, my name is Greg Tucci. This is our sixth seminar on assignments, as well as all the other stuff that we do. I'm the corporate lawyer for the brokerage, and I'm Vivian Reese's personal counsel. And we do a lot of real estate. So they asked me to come and do these talks so that you guys can get an idea of how to put an assignment together, because everybody seems to be very confused, and we do tons and tons of assignments. So the way I'm going to approach this is that we're going to physically go through what you have there. Okay, you can take notes. Anybody has any questions, just put up your hand and I'll explain it. I don't talk in legalese, I talk very plain and to the point for any of you that know me. So what we'll do is we're going to go through, we're going to fill it out. And like I said, if you have any notes, you need further explanation, just let me know. And welcome to the people that are online. I believe there's about 10 people that are watching this online. So the assignment agreement of purchase and sale, I'm sure you guys have all seen it. She put it up on the screen. And it's pretty basic. I'm not going to worry so much about you filling out these blanks. The issues with the assignment are, of course, our wonderful Schedule B. Okay, so for any of you who have never seen it, it's the last page on the handout, and it's what controls an assignment of a condominium or any property, but mostly condominiums, because this is where, and this year is going to be even busier, and as time goes on, there's going to be more and more assignments. This is your bread and butter now, because it's taking so long for stuff to come online. People are dying to buy stuff that's closing 5 months, 6 months, even a year, that's already up, that they can physically see. So there's a lot of money to be made. That's where the majority of your commissions are going to happen, especially in a market like now. Most of you that are in the market will see that the market has gone soft for freehold, but the condominium market, I get calls at 9 and 10 o'clock from agents trying to ask me questions because they're in multiple offers on condos. Like multiple offers are happening steady on condos, and the price is going through the roof. So basically, if you turn to Schedule B, we're going to start so that you can fill it out. Okay? The premise of Schedule B that you have to keep in mind, because this is where everybody gets confused, is that although you see the Schedule B flow, it seems like it flows from 1 to 6. It doesn't really flow 1 to 6. This is where the confusion with this form has occurred. We've spoken to Trev. They are not changing it, so you're going to have to learn how to use it. So 1 to 3 is the first part of the form. And the first part of the form is easy to fill out, and it's the portion that deals between the assignor and the builder. Okay, so we're not dealing with the sale at this part. We're not dealing with the assignment portion. We're dealing with the actual numbers that came between the builder and the assignor. So if you look at, well, I should go to. So if you go to number one is very clear. Total purchase price, including the agreement of purchase and sale. So it's whatever, we're going to assume that you're working for the assignee, so the buyer. Okay? Because if you know how to do it for the buyer, you'll know how to do it for the seller. It's easier. So on line 1, you're going to put down what your buyer is paying for it. So let's assume, for argument's sake, that we're going to say that that's $500,000. Okay, so you can put in $500,000 on line 1. Marty had them. I think they wrote them. So it's $500,000. Let's say that your buyer is willing to pay $500,000. Okay, very simple. Number 2, you take the price that the assignor paid to the builder. Again, very simple. So let's say that in this case, the assignor paid $400,000 to the builder. That's what you're going to put in number 2. So your guy's paying $500. The guy who's selling it to you paid $400. And this is why at this point in time, you need a copy of the agreement of purchase and sale between the builder and the assignor. Okay? It's imperative that you get that documentation. If the agent working for the assignor says, "Oh, I can't give that to you," or they give you something and the price is scratched out, no, there's no secrets. There's no because they're saying, oh, your guy's gonna get afraid because, I'm making 150,000. That doesn't matter. You need that contract because that's the way it works. You need to know what they're paying for. So we've got 1 and 2. Number 3 is the amount of deposits that the assignor has paid to the builder. So let's say that in this case, the assignor, the guy who has bought from the builder, gave the builder $50,000. Okay. That's what the builder is holding from the guy who originally bought the condo. So now, here's where it starts to get, the variables start to roll, and this is where you as agents, I can't give you a firm answer or what to do here. I can just give you examples. So that,
I don't understand number 2.
Number two is simply what the guy who's selling it to you, the price from his agreement of purchase and sale with the builder.
That's the original.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
the selling price, right?
The selling price, the overall selling price is in number 1. The amount that was paid, that the builder sold for, is number 2. The amount of the deposit that the original buyer gave the builder is number 3. Okay. The dotted line is where the form starts to get a little bit confusing. So you see here that it gives you 3 choices. Okay. This line explains how the $50,000 is going to be dealt with. Only the $50,000.
Question, how about if the assignment happens before all the deposits have been paid?
Well, then you would have, again, that's where you negotiate saying that the assignor is going to pay it, or you're going to pay what's been paid, and you're going to take the responsibility of giving the balance of the deposits. So what the question is let's say that on this deal, the deposits that have to be put down by the time of occupancy are $70,000, but this gentleman has only paid $50,000. There's 2 ways to deal with that. You can say to the assignor, you have to put down the rest and we'll give it back to you. So pay it now and we'll raise the deposit. Or we're just going to put down what you've paid and we'll deal with the rest of the deposits directly with the builder.
New buyers.
The new buyers, yeah. So on this line here, you have to explain how you're going to deal with this $50,000. So there's a million ways it can be dealt with. You have to make it work for your deal because some buyers won't have the money. They're interested in buying the place, but they got $20,000. They got $25,000. So it all depends on what your buyer has in order to make this deal happen. So if they've got the entire 50, in here you would put down that the 50 will be paid not to Royal LePage, not to the agent. The 50 will get paid directly to the assignor because that's his money out of his pocket. You got to understand that's already out of his pocket. So when the builder consents, this 50 grand will get credited to the new buyer, like to the assignee. So the assignor is out of pocket. So normally what the assignor likes to see is that he gets his money back. I'm selling you the paper. Yes, I'm making a profit, but I put this money out already. I'd like it back. So in this line, you would choose upon getting the builder's consent and the assignment agreement being finalized, you get your 50K.
Sorry, I know which line, yeah, where are you?
See the dotted line?
Yeah.
The dotted line, that's where you put how the 50, see how it's left open? This is why it gets confusing.
Okay.
And that line only deals with the amount in number 3.
And then, sorry, deposit.
That's right. So that's how you deal with how the deposit is going to be paid to the assignee.
Right on the dot.
Yeah, can you?
It's a little.
Well, no, but that doesn't matter. That's why I said, yeah,
Does it pertain to?
What you're saying, just so I understand, that $500,000
yeah,
is inclusive of the $50,000.
absolutely. That's the purchase price. That's what your buyer is paying. That's what he's paying for.
So that dotted line is not a divider, it is just where you fill in.
But it should be a divider. It should be a divider. This Schedule B is very, very poorly constructed, like very poorly constructed. So let's say, for example, now your guy has the $50,000. You would put on this line that upon acceptance of the agreement of the assignment and the consent of the builder, that the $50,000 will be paid to the assignor. If your guy doesn't have the $50,000 and only has 25, you would put down here that 25,000 to be paid upon acceptance of the assignment and consent, And then we're gonna get into the Schedule A, that is in all of your agreements. That's where you start putting in clauses about how the balance is gonna be taken care of, okay? So it's what you need to do to make the deal, what the seller will agree to, and what the buyer will agree to. This is where you negotiate how the money is held.
Do any one of these three sentences below that line, that you're not, that has nothing to do with what we're.
Yes, it does. That's what
So
they,
whichever you would.
yeah, they recommend one of the three,
Okay,
but they don't recommend partial.
okay.
See, so you have to drive it partial, you have to draft it. You have to say, you can do it you know how they do it with multiple deposits. You can put down here, the guys, it doesn't close for 6 months, the assignee will give $10,000 with the agreement, another $10,000 a month from now, whatever it takes to structure the deal so you can get it done and that both parties will agree.
This is consent of the lawyer or the?
Consent of the builder. Yeah. This has nothing to do with lawyer's consent, lawyer's review. This is strictly dealing with the numbers that you're dealing with in both agreements. The original agreement from the builder and the assignment agreement.
So let's say, for example, the new purchase price is 1.4, the original price is 1.2.
Yeah.
The original deposits to builder was 70,000.
Yep.
But the builder is asking for 10% of the new purchase price.
Okay. No, the new purchase price, no, the
Correct.
builder won't do that. Builders only
That's
work with what's
that's
on
what he's
paper.
asking in this case. This is,
Well, if that's what he's doing for the consent of the assignment, then you have to explain that to your client.
So is it gonna be the 70,000 original deposit plus another 10%?
Of course, that's what the guy's asking for.
So the 70 is gonna go to the,
But that you wouldn't put here. This is strictly the deposit that's already been paid to the builder at the time you do this assignment. All this other stuff gets dealt with in the body in the Schedule A. Because if you can't add stuff and foresee stuff. This is strictly, you gotta go strictly by the numbers. This is where everybody starts getting confused, because you start writing all kinds of stuff that doesn't belong on this form. All of these permutations, all of these variables would be, yeah. So in your case, for example, you would fill this out, put down the 70. In Schedule A, you would put in a clause saying the assignment, the builder's consent is conditional on another 10% being put down as a deposit. And in there, you would put that the assignee agrees to pay that additional 10% over and above the numbers set out in Schedule B. That's why it's important. I'll get to the Schedule A after, but it's important that you don't start mixing up the numbers here, or you'll never get the numbers
This
right.
just has to do with the deposit.
That's right. This only has to do with the fixed numbers from the deal.
Okay, so,
Everything outside of these numbers gets dealt with in clauses in Schedule A.
you can have 3 different types of deposits. You can have the deposit on the purchase price, then you can have a deposit on the structural changes, and you can have a deposit.
No.
That's
No,
totally
that has
different?
nothing
Okay,
to do with
okay,
this. Because if
okay.
you start dealing with that,
Okay,
you're gonna screw up the
just
form.
the deposit.
Just the
first
deposit that the
deposit,
builder is holding.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying everybody tries to fit everything into the
Okay.
schedule. The schedule is not meant for that.
Okay.
Schedule A is meant for that, where you sit down and you discuss exactly how all of these other things outside of this work.
Got it.
Because if you start doing that on this form, the numbers will never make sense. It's the same thing. If you do what he was talking about, saying, oh, but the builder wants another 10%, but that's got nothing to do with what he's already got in his pocket.
Okay, one last question. So the builder I'm working with pays 5% interest on the deposit money being held.
Nothing to do with this. It's all on
You
final
don't talk
close.
about-
No,
Okay.
that's got nothing to do with this. 5%, 8%, whatever they're paying, has nothing to do with it. That goes into Schedule A, how that's gonna be handled. Yeah, because again, you see, now you start making up numbers, they don't make any sense.
Right.
They don't add up. So that's all stuff that gets done off of Schedule B. So if you just concentrate on the actual physical numbers that you have, Schedule B is a piece of cake. Okay, so now we get to the second part of the Schedule B. The second part of the Schedule B has to deal with your profits. Okay, so the payment by the assignee to the assignor is the profit, not the profit plus the deposit, not the profit plus, a further deposit. It's strictly profit. So in this case, it's $100,000, right? He sold for 500, paid 400, so your guy's paying him $100,000 in profit. Right?
Great.
5 minus 4 is 100. Okay.
Like this one.
Now, the next line, we're talking about line 4. That's where you put in the profit. That's where you put in the difference between line 1 and line 2.
Before we pass this, there's 3 options on acceptance.
Those options are only, they're recommended. You can put them in any way you want, depending on how you structure the payment of that initial deposit. But those are recommended. They're just, but that's not the way it works. There's so many other ways you can structure. Okay, so now, number 5. Number 5 is, it says the word deposit again. The number 5 has nothing to do with the builder's deposit. Number 5 is the deposit that the buyer, the assignee, pays to your brokerage. Number 5 is the deposit that's set out on page 1 of your agreement. So where it says purchase price, you would put in, so if we go back to the front page, right? Purchase price, $500,000. That, the line on the the line on the front page where it says purchase price is what you put in from line 1 of Schedule B. Not the builder's price, it's the price that your guy is paying to the seller.
Say it's 80,000.
It's not 80,000, you paid $500,000 for this. So that's what goes on that line, $500,000. That's what you're selling, that's what the guy's buying it for. Okay, so line 1 on Schedule B goes on the front page purchase price. Okay. Now you go down to where it says deposit. Line 5, which is the deposit over and above the 50 grand. You understand? The 50 grand has nothing to do with this. The 50 grand is the deposit that he's giving to Royal LePage, or Home Life, or whoever it is. In your case, of course, Royal LePage. So let's say that over here, this guy is going to put down a $25,000 deposit. So you would put deposit, $25,000 on the front page of the agreement. So the deposit on the front page is the deposit from line 5 on Schedule B. So now, let's pick a simple example. If your buyer has this money, at the time that this gets signed and the consent is provided by the builder, at this point he's got to come up with $75K. 50 that goes to the assignor to cover line 3, because he's agreed to pay him once this assignment comes firm, and the 25,000 that's got to go to Royal LePage. So he needs $75,000 at this point. Okay, the 25,000 goes to Royal LePage, doesn't get released to the assignor. It gets put in trust. Okay, so then it says balance of the payment for this assignment agreement. So again, that's number 6 on the last line on Schedule B. The balance of the payment is the balance of the profit. Not the balance, not if he only put down 25,000 instead of the 50, right? So he's put down 25,000. You don't add the 25,000 that he still remains here. This is what everybody does, right? The balance of the payment for the agreement is $75,000. That's what goes in line 6. It's line 4 minus line 5. This is what the guy owes. He owes $75,000. That's the balance of the price. That's the balance of the profit.
So plus, so it's line 4 plus line 5?
It's line 4 minus line 5 is line 6.
So how much is the
Line 5 would be the deposit that he's giving Royal LePage.
Okay.
Okay? This is why, again, the form gets confused because people start mixing up the deposits. That's why I always say, look at it, really should be 2 pages to schedule. 1, 2, and 3, and page 2, 4, 5, and 6. Again, the top part has to do with the numbers that are already on paper between the assignor and the builder. The bottom part has to do with the profit. Always think about it that way. Don't mix up the deposits, don't mix up the way the numbers are working. We'll go through the combinations when we do Schedule 8. So right now, as a hard number, the guy paid $100,000 profit. He's putting 25 down with Royal LePage, so he owes the assignor $75K when this closes.
Do they have an option of that 50,000 original?
That's what comes into Schedule 8. As to how, now, we have these numbers, right? We see the numbers in front of us. Now, how are the numbers gonna be dealt with? This is where, again, as the agents, you gotta know both parties, and you gotta figure out, because very few, the problem with assignments is, people like to do them, but very few buyers have $150,000 or $200,000 lying around. So if the assigner is playing hardball and says, I want all my money before the final closing, you're gonna be hard pressed to close that deal, right? Because your buyer has to have all this money. Yeah, in a perfect world, shells out the money, he gets the paper, the assigner walks away and has nothing else to do with the builder, right? Now you own the paper, you own the unit, it's you and the builder. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works in the real world because people don't have this kind of money lying around.
So, let's say this deal goes through, and then he comes up with the $75,000. To the builder, the remaining would be $425, whichever way he can get that.
No, the builder gets 400. The builder's got 50, he sold for 400, the builder will get the 350. You're mixing up the bottom with the top again. Builder, in the second part, builder's out of the picture. The second part has nothing to do with the builder. That's why I said top part builder, second part between buyer and seller. That's how the numbers work. So if you keep them separate, it only deals not with variables and permutations. If you deal with the hard numbers, schedule, and you keep it as part 1, part 2, you will always get the numbers right.
Okay, so I got confused with paying the builder because the builder pays 400. He gets paid.
The builder sold for 400.
So,
He's already got 50, so he gets the balance.
so if the assignee is purchasing for 500,000.
That's between him and the assignor. It's got nothing to do with the builder. The builder doesn't care about the 500.
Correct.
The builder only cares about the 400.
Correct. So now he's paid $75,000 in deposits.
That-
He's got that money, right?
Right.
So,
No, what do you mean he's paid 75,000 in
so
deposits?
he's paid 25,000 to the brokerage.
Yep.
And the 50,000.
To the assignor. Yeah, so he's already put out the
So he's already put
75,000.
out 75,000.
But that's not deposits. That's a deposit, that's money paid back to the builder and a $25,000 deposit towards the profit. He still owes another 75.
So this assignment's costs him $150,000.
Correct. Well, it's cost him 100 and the 50 that he would have had to give to the builder had he bought it directly. That's why I'm saying these things, if you don't, where are you gonna find a buyer that's got 150? You might, I mean, it happens, don't get me wrong. But in most cases, they don't have this money. So they're willing to enter into this, but now you've got to structure the way they're gonna pay this money. So again, the numbers, don't think about making it complicated. The numbers are black and white. If you get the numbers right, the rest is easy. If you get the numbers wrong, the whole thing is a disaster. Because now you're gonna be putting the wrong things into Schedule 8. So it's very important that this sheet gets filled out properly. And then we can worry about Schedule 8. Somebody had a question?
Maybe this is like a question for later on, but on the day of closing, when we transfer the title, builder only needs his 350.
That's correct.
But there has to be a 400 and something to be dealt with eventually for that new buyer to get the title.
When he's already paid 50.
Right, but he has to pay another 75,000.
No, that's to the, yeah, on closing, but that's between the two lawyers. It's got nothing to do with the builder.
Oh, so the lawyer will do.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So, you probably said this 6 times.
Okay.
But, if I am the buyer.
Yep.
Now, I have paid out $75,000 or
Correct?
whatever, I still.
Maybe 150 in this case if you've got the money, but yes, 75. Let's not deal with the profit at this
Okay,
point.
so I now have to deal, I now have, all all I care about is the fact that I'm paying 500,000.
That's correct.
That's all I care about.
That's correct.
So I'm gonna add up my 75 or my 150.
Doesn't matter.
As long as it adds up to 500, I'm good.
You're good. Yeah, that's the way it works. So everybody understands these numbers because now I'm gonna get it, yeah,
Yes, but that was my question. So my worry is that I gotta pay 500,000.
that's correct.
I've already given out 75
Right.
for whatever reason.
Right, so you need
So now-
425,
Now,
that's
if I
correct.
have to get a mortgage, let's say, my mortgage would be for 425.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the numbers, everybody understands. I know I've repeated it a million times. I'm stressing the numbers because all of my agents, even though I've done this 6 times and I do these seminars all the time, I get the schedules and the schedules are always, always wrong. The numbers are very important, okay? So now we have these numbers. Now we go to Schedule A. This is where you put in whatever clauses are normal in an agreement of purchase and sale. But it's also where, in these particular cases, we deal with how this money is going to be transacted. So monies can be paid all upon the assignment being accepted and builder's consent. So in this case, there would be $150,000 that your buyer would have to come up with. 50 would go to the assigner, 100 would sit with Royal LePage. Okay, so at the end of the day, when he does his final closing, it's already there, right? He doesn't have to come up with any money except the balance to the builder, which is probably going to be a mortgage. That's in a utopian world where you got, your buyer has all this cash. In most cases, that's not the way it works. You're going to have to structure it so your buyer can afford to make the payments, and your seller is going to be happy with the way the payments are being made. This is where you guys come in. You have to look at what your guy can afford, and you have to look at what the assignor is willing to accept. All right? So let's deal with the $50,000 to the builder first. Okay? So even though there's this line here, you go to Schedule A, you repeat it. So you figure out how this $50,000 is going to be paid. You can pay it all at once, and it goes to the assignor if your guy has it, or you can structure it. You can say that the assignee agrees to put down $25,000 upon acceptance and the assignment going firm, $25,000 a month from now, or $25,000 that's remaining on final closing. Some assignors are okay with it. They'll wait for they know they've got 50 in, but they'll wait for their other 25 until the deal actually closes.
So whatever you're writing on that dotted line is.
Gets
what you're putting
repeated
on.
and scheduled. You may not even have enough room on that dotted line, so you would put C Schedule A. It's easier for you to do than Schedule A if you're breaking it up into pieces. So over here, you would say C Schedule A, C clause and Schedule A, because there's more room for you to put down. Like I said, if you're structuring it in 3 payments, 2 payments, 4 payments, that's what you do in Schedule A. You speak to how this money is going to be dealt with, and concentrate on the first clause being only to do with the 50,000 or the deposit, whatever the deposit is, in line 3 of Schedule B.
And this is directly the name of the assignment.
That is correct. That's correct.
So what did you say?
She said that money is the one that's going directly to the assignor. That is correct. Okay? So that, yeah.
So that could be a split or at once.
You can do, there's some deals that I see where they don't pay them anything until the final closing. So you got some assignees, some assignors that own 7, 8, 10, 12 units. They need to flip them because they can't close them. So what do? They enter into these agreements, and the only deposit is the one that goes to Royal LePage. They take none of their money back. It happens until closing. So this is why first clause deals with how you're going to deal with number 3, whatever the number is in number 3.
And if you were to go to the bank at that time, will the bank direct that deposit to the assigner? So if I'm getting a mortgage, would they
You
mortgage?
can't get a mortgage until you close.
Right. So if my assignor is willing to wait for financing, and my bank says, okay, we'll finance it for you.
Yeah, so on
they will
closing, the
direct-
lawyers exchange the money.
Right, but the banks would be okay with you giving it to a non-bank, like giving their funds to a non-builder, I should say?
It's an assignment. That's the way it is. Because you know why? That money's already sitting with the builder. It's a real deposit. It's not like you're giving it to some third-party seller and then they gotta worry that the deposit isn't actually going to the builder. That's money that's already spent. It's on account. So the banks have no problem with that because it's a real deposit. The builder's not gonna say, yeah, I've got 50K when he really doesn't have 50K, right? So the deposit is real. It's just that you have to hand it over to the assignor because that's his money.
I did an assignment a few months ago, and that money that we're talking about, the deposit.
The deposit to the builder,
To the
just to
builder.
make clear for everybody, yeah.
The deposit was gonna get paid out
When?
upon acceptance,
Okay,
which was fine. But the only thing is that fell between the two lawyers, because the lawyer is saying it's supposed to go directly to the seller. The check should be made
Yeah.
directly to the seller, and the buyer's lawyer was saying, well, no, it should go through lawyers and trust.
what did it say in the agreement?
Neither.
Oh. Well, you got a problem.
It said, yeah, but that's a problem.
That's the problem. The money, that's why I said it's very important that you put the clause in Schedule A as to how the monies are directed. Because if you put in that it's directed in such and such, $25,000 upon acceptance, $25,000 3 weeks from now, the lawyer has no rights to override that. I had a big fight with the lawyer who took the deposit, and I don't want to get off track because it starts to make it confusing. But you should know that the lawyer cannot hold the money. If you read, and a lot of lawyers who do assignments don't understand this, and you guys might be happy, this is why it's important that the deposit on number 5, you know the deposit they give Royal LePage? It's important that you get a big enough deposit to pay your commission. And I'll tell you why. The commission doesn't wait until the final close. The commission to you gets paid out at the time that this assignment becomes firm. Okay, and I've had lots of arguments with lawyers that turn around and say, no, it's gotta close. Doesn't have to close. Read the front page. The front page says that upon completion of this assignment agreement, the commission is payable.
That's why it's called an assignment.
Okay, and a lot of the agents don't know that, and a lot of the lawyers don't know that, and I have arguments with them all the time. Then I say to them, oh yeah, but that's not, it doesn't matter if it's right or not. I said, unless your client said that no funds are to be released until the final closing, they're gonna be released, because that's what's in the agreement. So if you got a client that's nervous about releasing any money until final closing, then you have to put it in the agreement that no money is gonna be released until final closing. Otherwise, that's the way it works. You guys get paid your commission upon completion of the assignment, not completion of the deal.
Say that.
Go to the front page of the agreement, and it says, to be held, so if you go down to where it says deposit, to be held in trust pending completion or other termination of this assignment agreement. Not the agreement of purchase and sale, this assignment agreement. That's this. So if it takes 4 years for the builder to close, and it hasn't been specified in here that all the deposits to Royal LePage are going to be held until 4 years, you get paid.
How we structure Schedule A, are those standard clauses?
Standard clauses. Yeah.
Okay.
Just, or you make them up. I mean, it's just,
Okay.
so for example, in Schedule A for the $50,000, you would say, the parties here to the seller and buyer, the assignor and assignee agree that the deposit as set out in clause 3 of Schedule B is to be distributed in the following way.
Okay.
And just put it in.
And is that where we deal with future deposits?
Now, hang on a second. That's just for that part. Because otherwise, again, you're gonna start mixing up numbers and they're not gonna add up and they're not gonna make sense.
Okay, so do we use a different confirmation of cooperation too, if it's broker to broker to override this assignee, like getting paid? Or do we use a standard?
I would use a standard. In there, it tells you by negotiable check may be payable too.
Okay,
So, no, in the agreement, yes, it's being paid directly to the assignor, yes. It'll be on the dotted line and you're gonna put it in that clause.
okay, very good.
So where does it say we get paid right away?
Right on the front page, if you read, where it says deposit. If you read the deposit, it says to be held in trust pending completion or other termination of this assignment agreement.
Thank you.
Not the agreement of purchase and sale.
Just plain devil's advocate, the buyer gives the deposit to the seller.
Yep.
Okay, so the 50,000 that was originally to the builder.
Yep.
And that seller disappears.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter in this case because that 50,000 is still with the builder.
Yeah,
And therefore, the new buyer can still close,
that's right.
even though
Oh, yeah.
the first buyer is gone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
Yeah. Once you give him the money, he's done. He's out.
Oh.
What he's gonna do is he's gonna, well, in this case, if he disappears, he's out his profit. So he's not gonna disappear.
And you're gonna talk to us about.
Yeah, the issue is where guys want it all. So now your guy, in this case, will be putting on 150, 50 to cover the deposit and 100 in profit, and the seller disappears. And now there's an issue. Let's say the builder can't close.
Yes.
Now where do you go get your $100,000? Because the guy's gone. This is why I don't mind giving the deposit, but I do have an issue in paying the profit prior to the final day of closing. But it's all, yeah, it all depends on the lawyers, right? See, I know I do this stuff in my sleep, but a lot of these guys haven't got a clue. And that's what ends up happening. That's why if your client says, yeah, never, as a buyer's agent, never agree to pay the profit until the final day of closing. Never. Because exactly that can happen. And you're not covered by Tarion. No, because the money's been given to a third party. Hasn't been given to a builder. So there's no insurance on that money.
So who's holding that 100 grand?
It'll be either Royal LePage or the assignor's lawyer.
So
I like for it to be paid to, if you're paying it all, I'd like it all to be paid to Royal LePage except for the 50K that's.
So in that case, if he pays more than what the deposit is, you are covered for your commission, even if it disappears.
Of course. It's got nothing to do with the seller disappearing. Sellers don't disappear unless they get all their
Just in
money.
case.
If they get all their money, then you have to worry about them disappearing.
So maybe I'm wrong, I probably am, but
Maybe
my
not.
assumption is, from what I understood, even if you sign a property, you stay as the assignor are somewhat liable.
Not somewhat.
So you're still completely liable to the builder.
If the assignee doesn't close, the assignor is on the hook to close. The only thing is that now he's got free money because he doesn't have to give back any of the money. The deposits, nothing has to be given back. It's all his.
And is there,
What about the HST? Okay, we're gonna get to that. We're still.
just to follow up with that question, is there any clause that, or is there anything that we can stipulate in, if we're representing the assignor?
Okay, the seller, yeah.
Is there anything that we can stipulate in the APS and Schedule A or whatever that acknowledges that should they not close, or that there's any sort of legal?
You don't have to do that because in the builder's agreement and then in the builder's consent, it states it.
It states
That
that
the
they-
assigner remains liable to
Right.
complete the transaction should the assignee fail to close. So you don't have to worry about that because it's right in the builder's consent.
No, I think what I was just saying was, is there any, based on, we know that they're signing, they're agreeing, they're accepting the paper, the contract. Is there anything that we as the agents representing
The
the
seller.
seller can do to further protect our clients in that event, foreseeing that possibly that could happen? There's nothing we can
There's
do, it would
nothing.
just be like small claims,
Yeah.
would be court, it would be.
Well, it wouldn't, yeah, I mean, if your seller is forced to close and he incurs costs, of course, you
Yes,
would,
so then we would go back, at
yeah,
that
it
point.
would
it's
breach your
legal.
contract
Okay.
and you would sue.
And that's just between the two of them, and it's
That's
nothing we
correct,
can
and
do.
nothing to do with you guys. So there's nothing that you can put in there.
Okay, so it's not.
In general, since you've dealt with a lot of assignment, in general, what sort of deposit are they looking for? In other words, what sort of commission do realtors ask for? Do they ask for the 5% or what sort of commissions?
Oh, that I don't know, I don't get
You
involved.
don't see enough of them,
No,
no?
I never talk to
Does
people
anybody
about
here know?
commissions or
2.5?
legal fees or,
It's the same as anything else.
it all depends.
It's not the same anywhere else,
Yeah,
because like in Newmarket or Toronto, it's totally different.
Yeah, you get what you can. As much as you can, sorry.
And they pay on the original price, not
No,
the purchase price.
no, they pay on the purchase price.
I just thought that was the case.
Who'd you buy it from?
Beverly Hills?
No, you bought it from the builder.
No, from.
On an assignment, if you get paid on the sale price, not on the builder's price. Why would you get paid on $400,000 if you're doing the transaction for $5?
That was the case.
Well, I don't know what happened, but you get paid on the sale price, not on the builder's
And the
price.
original.
I'm telling you, whoever did that ripped you off. That's not the way
I
it
know, I
works.
talked to the managers.
Which manager? The manager here?
Here, yeah.
They're wrong.
That's the way
They're
they're
wrong.
selling. It's very-
I'm telling you, when you do an assignment, if you're selling something to somebody for $500,000, that's what you get paid on. It's always been like that.
It's always on the purchase price.
Yeah, on the purchase
It's
price.
not on the-
So are these commissions typically inclusive of HSD?
No,
Do you
of course
see that? No?
No.
Okay.
no, commission's always plus HST.
Yeah.
Whether or not they put it on the MLS, it's always plus HST.
Oh, yeah, your commissions are always plus HST.
The reason you don't want to pay all the money to the assignor is Italian or?
No, it's because you don't want this, let's say you can't close, now you're out all that money, or if the builder goes bankrupt and can't finish the building, you're out that money. You can't go to the builder and say, hey, but I paid $500,000. He says, no. We have a $50,000 deposit. That's what our bonding company is gonna return to you. The hundred's between you and the guy you gave it to. You didn't give it to me. That's why you don't give out all that money.
So how about the Tarian case? That's the.
Tarion only protects you to 40K. So, and Tarion only covers the builder. Tarion's not gonna cover profit.
So if there is a late occupancy, how about that? Are the assigner is entitled to the Tarion as 7,500? We can
No.
claim it later? or-
No. Once it's assigned, all the rights that were under the original agreement transfer to the assignee. Assignor has no right.
But the assignee is entitled to the further claims.
It depends. Some builders put in the consent that that the assignee waives all rights to any Tarion compensation. You have to look at the consent. They're not all standard, and that's another problem. I get consents and I read them, and there's stuff that in there that I don't like. A lot of people just, yeah, go ahead, sign. You can't do that, because we're getting a little off topic here, but there's even incentives. So for example, you buy pre-construction. Builder says, oh yeah, we're gonna give you 1 year free maintenance, $10,000, blah, blah. Now the builders have gotten, free assignment. The builders have gotten smart. What they'll say is, at the bottom, there'll be a clause that says, these incentives are applicable only to the original buyer and will not be applied to any transfer to any assignment. Because they're selling to pre-construction, 3 years down the road now, the price has gone up and you're trying to assign it, you're competing with them. They're not giving any incentives. You want to assign it? That's on you.
But during this, we still have layer public.
You can. Again, in Schedule A, you can put that it's conditional on financing, conditional on lawyer's approval, and conditional on builder's consent. The clause about conditional on builder's consent is imperative, okay? And a lot of people who do assignments don't put it in. It is conditional on, because without that consent, there's no go, right? And if you don't put it in, now this thing's become firm. You can't sell it.
And at that time, the builder has to give you the agreement, so you can actually.
The other side has to give you the agreement. The builder will not give you the agreement, I can tell you right now. The assignor has to give you the agreement. You call the builder, even when I call them, and I'm very good friends with most of the developers' lawyers, they'll say to me, really? I'll say, look, because what happens is people bring me stuff, I review it, and they take it with them. I said, when you make it firm, bring me back a copy. Never seen them again. The next thing I know, I'm getting a letter from the builder, oh, we're closing in 2 weeks. Closing in 2 weeks. My girls go crazy looking for the agreement. I don't have it. So I'll call the builder and say, can you send us? I say, really? Like, we're not supposed to do that. I'll say, and they'll say, but a lot of lawyers won't get it. The builder says, sorry, go to your client, it's got nothing to do with us. They got a copy at the time of the sale, right?
I think we always have to ask for that.
You have to ask the assigner.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you're doing this, before it goes firm, say, hey, I need a copy of the original agreement. It's standard.
Okay, sorry, a couple questions.
Yeah.
Okay, one is, often when they're purchasing originally, they have upgrade packages and all sorts of upgrades. Okay, so when they're doing this purchase, it's inclusive, because sometimes on the APS or when you first do the sign-in, you'll have the purchase price for the unit, and then there'll be some down, within the contract, you'll see some extra parking lot or whatever. So this is inclusive, this $500,000 is inclusive of everything.
That's
including
correct.
The purchase price, any upgrades, parking lot.
Unless otherwise stipulated.
Right.
And I'll tell you, this just happened to me about 6 weeks ago. The guy did the agreement, and then they sold the parking space for $60,000. And they had notes everywhere about plus parking. I constantly, what are you doing? If the guy's buying it for $500 and a parking space, and it's $560, then number one is $560. It's not $500 plus a note, about, oh yeah, there's a parking space.
Right.
Does my guy have to buy the parking space? Yes. Then he's paying you $560. I don't understand what that, so
yes.
if there's additional charge, that number one includes everything unless otherwise specified. It does include the upgrades because your assignee has to accept the contract as it was signed. So if the assignor bought $25,000 worth of upgrades, when he assigns it, the assignee has to take the $25,000 in upgrades. You can't say, oh, well, you know what, nah, because the builder's gonna say, wait a minute. That's the deal. You take it as it is or leave it. There's no renegotiation on an assignment.
So one more question,
Yeah.
and I think I'm
No,
good.
that's fine.
Is purchasing a new unit, you get a 10-day rescission.
No cooling off
off.
period on an
You
assignment.
don't get that.
Nope.
So with this, obviously, we don't necessarily have this, we have condo docs, but not necessarily a status. We don't have anything other than.
There is
condo
nothing. There's
docs.
no status, there's no nothing.
There's nothing. So we would still put in a clause though upon review, solicitor's
Yeah, of
review,
course.
which I would do anyway. And then whatever paperwork is given to us.
That's correct.
we would accept.
But there is no cooling off period on an assignment.
You pointed out upgrades, and typically upgrades are paid up upfront. Where would that go into your?
Okay, this is where you negotiate. So if there's upgrades and you have an amount for upgrades, and it's not included in number one, then you have to put a clause in Schedule A saying, in addition to the purchase price of $500,000, right? The assignee agrees to pay X amount of dollars for upgrades on closing. That's how you deal with that, to the assignor. Yeah.
But through Royal LePage?
No, through the lawyers.
Yeah.
Royal LePage, once you've got this signed up and you got the deposit, you're done.
But why do you have to add that? Why don't you add it to the price initially?
No,
Okay.
because it's not part of the purchase price. It's a separate schedule and it's upgrades. So I like to know that that's what they're paying for upgrades. Because number two, you're not paying land transfer tax on it. The bank will not mortgage you on upgrades unless it's in the original. So if you paid $500, right? And they want to see a copy of the original agreement, by the way. So they're going to see the difference, but they're not going to, banks do not mortgage upgrades. And you don't want it in your consideration when you're registering it, because that's not the true price.
When builders, so you're saying, like, when a builder sells a house,
Yeah.
and the clients come back and do upgrades, say 2 months later.
Yeah.
Amendments are made to change the price of the house.
Shouldn't be done that way.
We've always done it.
I know, but it shouldn't be done that way. Upgrades are upgrades, they're not the purchase price. Now, you're artificially increasing the purchase price of that house.
True, but then clients can't afford upgrades.
Oh, but so that's why they do it, so they can try to get it mortgaged. But you're not supposed to be mortgaging upgrades.
So when you're doing an assignment, we actually just had this conversation. So the person comes in, buys the house, they have their original contract.
Yep.
Then 2 months later, they do their upgrade,
Yep.
and let's say they put $100,000 on it, the purchase price becomes that.
That's correct.
They sell the assignment at that price, all of a sudden something happens and they decide to change their mind and take those upgrades off. How does that work? How does that work with the
You
assignment?
can't. Once it's assigned, you're stuck with that original. You cannot remove the upgrades.
So it would be a case of fraud.
Right.
Should that buyer come back, remove the upgrades, change it, because at that point,
Yeah, but you show me a builder that after he sold you $100,000 worth of upgrades, you say, it's okay, don't
No.
worry about it.
no, true. But sometimes things do happen
You
where.
can change the upgrades, or the builder will come back and say, you know what, we can't put this in, we can't do this
Yes.
upgrade, or they miss an upgrade on closing. That money has to go back to the original seller, because now the buyer is getting a credit, the secondary buyer is getting a credit on closing. So that money actually belongs to the seller.
So then when you're doing the clause about getting, like, making sure you have the contract, the original contract, you really need to make sure that if there's any amendments done.
You need them all, you need the whole
everything.
thing.
So-
You'll never get finance.
Right.
I'll get phone calls, oh, we're missing schedules A, B, and C, yeah, but we're closing tomorrow. Yeah, but I never got them. I'm like, and you're calling me now? And then go ahead, try to find the schedules. Signer's gone, builder won't deal with you. So where am I supposed to get these schedules? You have to have the complete agreement, even all the Terrion schedules. Even though Terrion is like 9 pages long, and the last 4 pages are useless, banks ask for it. And lots of times I have an argument with them, I say, it's standard. Yeah, but you know, I've only got the first 5 pages, but it's standard, there's nothing in there that's here. Yeah, but we need them. So, that's why you gotta, I mean, I know what you're saying, people do it all the time. They'll go to the building site and say, this is what we wanna do, and they roll it all. And the builders know, they're rolling it all into the purchase price. Nobody's gonna come and arrest you. But it's not really supposed to be done that way. And Revenue Canada doesn't want it done that way. So you'll see when most of because Revenue Canada's become very, very, very picky over the last 4 or 5 years. And so what will happen is now when we get our statement of adjustments from a builder, it actually says additional consideration, and it tells you what that additional consideration is. And it's specified it's for the extras.
So just to be clear, if the original agreement had it already in there that the upgrades
Then you're
were
fine.
included, then you're fine.
Yeah.
If they're added after the original agreement was signed, then the assignee
Is responsible to pay the additional.
pay those
Right.
additionals.
Now, going back to what they were saying, you can do it in 2 ways. If you know that there's $30,000 worth of upgrades, you make the price, so it's all inclusive, okay? But you should put in to protect yourself that the buyer knows that $30,000 is allocated to upgrades. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's always best to be detailed in these things so that when somebody comes back, they can't say, oh, but I thought, I did one the other day. He came in and he goes, how come I have to pay you so much money? This was on an interim closing. So I went through it and I showed him and he goes, yeah, but I paid for the upgrades. I said, well, the builder's saying that you paid this amount for the upgrades, that you give him this money, but your upgrades are really this amount. And he goes, oh, I don't remember that. Now, if it was rolled into the purchase price, we would have no idea. So he went back and he found his paperwork and he said, oh yeah, they're right. I said, yeah, builders are usually right. I catch them every once in a while. If they miss something on an amendment, I said, but you understand what? So it was shown, and now he understood where the difference was. But if it wasn't there, I wouldn't have been able to explain it. I don't know. How am I supposed to know what you paid for, what your upgrades are, how much you deposited? I have no idea.
Okay, so on a personal condo that I bought, I've changed the purchase price 3 times because the builder wanted 25% for structural changes and 50% for upgrades.
Okay.
Like upfront, or in addition to.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he changed the purchase price twice. You're saying that's not kosher?
It's not supposed to be done that way. But these are changes, structural changes are different from renovations. I want 9-inch trim, I want, these are extras. That's not an extra, he's doing a structural change, so it's actually part of the act, so it's okay. You're fine.
Okay, okay, so then you talk about the extras.
Extras are not supposed to be rolled into the purchase price.
It didn't feel right at the time because I'm getting stung land transfer tax on that money.
But you'll be able to mortgage it.
But what?
You'll be able to get a mortgage on your extras.
But you just said banks don't mortgage extras.
Well, if it's rolled into the price, your extras aren't broken out, are they? You're saying he rolled it into the price.
Right.
Yeah,
Said in
so
addition to.
as far as the bank knows, they see an agreement of purchase and sale. They have no idea what makes up that agreement
Okay,
of
so I
purchase.
feel better about that.
Yeah.
So that top number 1 would be the new price.
That's correct.
So all
No,
those.
the new price is what you're selling it for, not from the builder.
Right,
Number 2 is the price, the new price from the builder.
right. So all those monies, in addition to the original deposit and then the structural deposit, and those other 2 deposits go into the Schedule A?
No, You can put, because they're part of the purchase price, if you're selling it, if your new purchase price is $500,000,
got it,
including all
okay.
your changes, and you're selling it for 6, then that's all you have to put down here. Because it's one price.
Right, but the deposits,
The deposit is depending on what deposits you put in, including whatever extra deposits you put down, because he's already got that. So anything that you pay to the builder as a deposit
does go in that
goes
line.
into those deposits, because the assignee is gonna get the benefit of those.
So if you were including the upgrades, the additions, you would put it, let's say they paid separately to the builder, and now you.
But the builder has them,
And the builder has them.
how's he gonna show them? Is he gonna show them as a deposit, or is he gonna show them as extras paid for? He'll give you credit on the statement of adjustments, he's not supposed to show it as a deposit, because it's not a deposit,
Why aren't they supposed to change the purchase price? I just.
because it affects the market.
But you're selling an upgraded product.
It doesn't matter, it's an extra.
On land registry, you can actually see that. So sometimes on land registry, if you're looking at previous purchase and you're trying to compare, it would say 500, but the client paid the
That's because they're backing out the HST.
That's right, so there's a $50,000 difference.
No, but
and
that's
how you.
That's the HST that
No,
they're
no,
backing
it's
out.
actually upgrades, because I had this happen, where we had the upgrades, she paid 44,000 extra.
Yeah.
And on land registry, the transaction.
It was the original
showed
price.
The original price, and then she goes, no, but I paid this much, so this is where they try to avoid
The
that.
government rule is that you're supposed to show as the transfer price what you paid for the house, not the upgrades. But again, like I said, nobody's policing that, nobody's gonna arrest you because you're doing that. I'm just telling you the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to manipulate the purchase price in any way, shape, or form. That's how you get the true value of the property. Because you can imagine, if you show that you paid $600 for yours and you put $100,000 in upgrades, and your neighbor didn't do that, right? You're helping him increase the value of his property artificially.
So why isn't someone policing them?
The government doesn't care as long as they get money. Nobody polices this stuff. Government only cares about tax. That's all they care about. If there's tax involved, they're collecting tax on that extra. They don't care what you do with it. But really, that's the whole point.
And why did they, this is off topic just for 1 second, why did they suddenly want to know what you sold your house for this year, whereas they didn't want to know in all the other years?
Because people are moving into houses every 6 months or every year and claiming it as their principal residence. So now they can go back and say, oh, but you sold this as your principal residence 7 months ago, and now you're selling another one, and you're not going to sell another one. So now they've got to try. Now you can't claim it as your principal residence. Now it's business. That's why. They're policing passive income.
Yeah. So,
Thank
if
you.
there's a cashback, say, I don't know, small, say 7,500.
From who?
From the builder for purchasing cashback because they're hoping.
Yeah, pre-construction incentive, yeah.
Right, so would that go in Schedule A that there's a
No.
cashback due, or?
No, it's gotta be in the consent. You gotta get the builder. See, some of those cashbacks are not transferable, like I said. Those
Okay.
incentives are
All
not
right, so
necessarily
check to see if it
transferable.
is.
If it doesn't say that they're not transferable, it automatically is transferable when he signs the consent. Because you gotta understand, the assignee takes the original agreement of purchase and sale as is, subject to anything that the builder has built into his amendments. So that's why the builders have gotten very smart, and the last sentence that they put in all their amendments is not transferable to an assignee.
Okay, so I have to look for that.
So if you're selling it, right, and the guy says, oh, here's the agreement, then yeah, by the way, we have a $10,000 incentive for this, $5,000 for that. You have to make sure, don't just give it to you, say, oh yeah, I heard that there's a $10,000 this, but that's not necessarily the case. You gotta tell your client, hey, this is not transferable, you don't get this stuff. I'm telling you now, you don't get it. So before they make it firm, you gotta let them know that. Okay, we went off topic. Let me go back to, we were talking about Schedule A, and we were talking about the clause that you put in for the $50,000 deposit in our example, right? Where you specify how that's being dealt with. The next clause is the same, except now you're dealing with how the balance of the payment is going to be done. So we're talking about the $75,000 in line 6 in our example. You would do the same thing. You would find out from your buyer, how do you want to pay this 75 grand? You have it now, you want to put 50% of it down now, you want to wait until the final closing. As I've already said, I always suggest that the profit gets paid on the day of final closing. Okay, just to make it safe, that's what I suggest. But again, in Schedule A, you would now have another clause mirroring clause number 1, only this has to deal with the amount specified in number 6 of Schedule B. And again, in there, you can break it up. $10,000 now, $10,000 a week from now, whatever you want. It's custom to whatever it takes for you to make that deal. So whatever's comfortable, whatever your buyer can afford, and whatever you can get your seller to accept.
So you're suggesting to pay that
On final closing.
the original price?
Yep, between the builder and the assignor. When the final closing takes place, that's when this money gets transferred between lawyers. So whenever we're doing an assignment, I'm dealing with the builder, then I take the builder's statement of adjustments, I do my statement of adjustments for the portion, and that's what I send to the buying lawyer, and I say, you owe me X amount of dollars. So I get a check, and he deals with the builder.
That's on closing, not
That's-
when the condominium's registered.
No, that's on final closing. Not an occupancy, on final closing.
Excuse me. You know, the commission for the original realtor who sold the condo initially to the assignor, is he entitled to get down closing that the remaining?
That's got nothing to do with your assignment. That's between the original agent and how the builder structures his deposit. We do not get involved in that. So if he's been paid, he's been paid. If there's a clawback, it gets clawed back. If he has to wait until 90 days or a year after final closing, that's between the original agent and the builder.
But the assignment doesn't cancel.
Assignment doesn't cancel anything. That's a different deal. Now, there, the builder's paying commission, not your buyer. You understand? Not the assignor. That's the builder's thing. Yeah, so this has no effect on that. So those are the two clauses that are important for Schedule B. Now, again, always put in a clause for financing. Inspection, you can forget. You're not going to be able to put in a clause for inspection unless the unit is already in occupancy and your guy wants to go in and take a look at it because it's been occupied for 3 or 4 months. They want to make sure there's no damage. Okay, so if it's already occupied, you might want to put in a thing for inspection, make it conditional on lawyer's review, and make it conditional on obtaining the builder's consent. And yes, that's in here already, but I'm overkill on that. Put in a clause that's conditional on the builder's consent, on obtaining builder's consent.
So the financing, same thing as the builder would ask for pre-approval mortgage.
That's correct.
They will ask for.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, if your buyer can't get the mortgage, you better not get them to go firm on an assignment because it's going to be big problems.
If the seller is the builder's office, so you don't need the builder's consent here as a condition.
Say that again?
So if the builder's office is selling the assignments, so you don't need the builder's consent because.
Well, they've already got consent. Yeah, but that's, we're talking about between two individuals. Yeah, not back to the, now I know what you're saying, the builder puts the last 10 units up for sale. But how does the builder do an assignment? Builder does a sale, not an assignment. So somebody's gone back to the builder and said, no, in that case, they'll provide you the consent on at the time that you sign up, but there still has to be a consent. Otherwise, you can't buy something, you can't sell something you don't own. So if I've gone back and given it to the builder's agent and said, can you assign this? The builder's gonna say, okay, I'm gonna consent, but you need that, because otherwise you got no contract. So yes, it's still required, so put it in. The key is this, I always say, put in all kinds of clauses. They get stroked out. When the client comes back and says, you didn't do this, so yeah, I did. You crossed it out and signed. What do you want from me? It's like people say, oh, when the market was hot, it was, you couldn't go in with an inspection. But I would say to my agents, put it in and cross it out before you give it, but get your client to initial it. Because you know how many calls we got after, oh, this is broken, but you bought it without an inspection. Yeah, but my agent, no, it's not your agent. You needed to do that in order to get the deal. Do you remember that there was 50 offers on the property? No, you forgot. See, clients have amnesia.
Yes.
Okay? But as soon as that's written in and then crossed out, you can say, well, I'm looking at the agreement, and you did have an inspection clause in there, but it seems to have been crossed out, and you initialed it. Oh, I don't remember that. Well, I've got it here. If you want to look at your papers, and that saves you a lot of headaches.
You mentioned something about assignment, and if it's limited, let's say it's occupied. Do we have anything to protect the assignee for vacant possession?
You have to put in that he's getting vacant possession.
Okay.
Yeah. Just put in that would be, if your guy wants vacant possession, you gotta put in that he's gonna be given vacant possession. Now, we're gonna touch on the HST. And this is something that, again, a lot of lawyers don't get. What Revenue Canada is doing now, so when you're structuring this, right, your standard form is gonna say that it's HST included. Okay, that's what you're gonna see in here. So on a resale piece of property, it says HST included. This is very important. The HST is included only in the portion that the builder is charging. So back in our example, the HST is included on the $400,000. It's not included on the $500,000, not included on the $100,000 top-up. So what ends up happening is the seller, the assignor, is responsible to pay HST on that $100,000. Yeah, on the profit. So he thinks he's walking away with 100, but technically he's not walking away with 100. The issue is this: if the seller doesn't pay that HST, and there isn't a clause in the agreement saying that the seller agrees to be responsible for any HST over and above the builder's price, right? So on the top up, the Revenue Canada can go back after your buyer and say, you're supposed to pay HST. We're supposed to collect HST. So now good luck with your buyer going after the seller to get that money. So you now have to put in a clause in regards to the HST saying that the seller agrees that they will be responsible to pay any HST exigible on the profit portion.
So we have to put that clause in.
To protect your buyer, you better put the clause in. So basically the clause says that the seller, or the assignor in this case, agrees to be responsible to pay for any HST due and payable on the profit amount, or on the top-up amount.
That doesn't get you the hook of salary.
Sure it does. As a buyer, it does. Because you've been given an indemnity.
And then he doesn't pay. They come after you.
No, they'll go after, as long as you have that in there and you show it to CRA, CRA will go after the seller.
So what if you're acting for the seller and you have an offer in
You
front of
better
you?
let them know.
No, but wait, what if the buyer's agent hasn't put that clause in there?
Doesn't say nothing.
Oh. So
Revenue
then
Canada can still go after the seller, right? Because that's who actually owes the money. But they can also go after the buyer, because he can turn around and say, no, that was my money. The HST, it says HST included, the other guy's responsible for the HST. So yes, if you have that clause in, and Revenue Canada, Revenue Canada is all about being organized. Meanwhile, I mean, they're very unorganized, but that's why if you're organized, they tend to just close their folders and walk away. So when you give them that, they'll turn around and say, oh, okay, so he's indemnified you. And you're not the one who collected this money. He was the one that collected the money. It's the same thing when you were asking me about the commercial thing. That's why we signed a GST election 44. So we don't pay the HST, but in that's just a government form that does basically the same thing. It says, I bought the property, I'm a GST registrant, and I'm gonna report it. So when Revenue Canada goes after the seller says, no. Here's my form. I'm not responsible to pay you the HST. If there's an issue that the buyer didn't report it on his, you go talk to the buyer, don't bother me, and Revenue Canada goes away. So that's very important that you guys put that in there, because these forms, like I said, all standard, because it made sense, right? Because Revenue Canada never used to police this. Now Revenue Canada all of a sudden is policing it. So if you're acting for the seller, put that bug in their ear that you may have to back out 13% of your profit. Because again, if you don't do it, if you don't put it in writing, your seller's gonna come to you and say, why didn't you tell me? I'm not a tax expert. Yeah, but you should know. You should have told me. I would have never sold. I would have added $10,000 to the purchase price. So it's your job to make sure that they acknowledge that that could be the case.
Question about HST rebates.
Yep.
As far as I know, on closing, like usually the builder's contract states that if the original buyer can't pay that, they can't qualify for the rebate to the builder, they are responsible.
That's right.
There's an assignment, who pays that rebate to the builder?
Okay, so here's the way HST works. The HST is built into the purchase price, because I was gonna get to this now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. HST is built into the purchase price. When the assignee gets consent and takes over the assignment, they're done. The assigner's done. He's not responsible for any HST, he's not responsible for anything on the purchase price, he's only responsible for the HST on his profit. He's out of the picture. The only time he comes back into the picture is if the assignee can't close. So the assignee can't close, a signer comes in, and it's the same as when he had originally purchased it. If he was moving in and he's eligible for the HST, he's going to get the credit. If he's not moving in, he doesn't get the credit. Okay, so that's the way, that's in a nutshell, that's how HST works. Now, you should know this. What we've been finding in the last year is that on an assignment, and this you have to, if you're acting for the buyer, even if they're first-time buyers, they intend to move in and use it for themselves, the builders will not give them the rebate on closing. No matter what proof I give them, say to them, look, the guy's living there, they took occupancy, they've been living there for 5, doesn't matter. The builder on an assignment doesn't want to get involved. So what he does is he takes away the rebate. So your buyer's going to have to come up, in most cases now it's only $24,000 because there is no federal portion, anything over $400,000, which what are you going to buy for $400,000? So all you get is the provincial portion. So it's $24,000. Your buyer, your assignee has to be prepared to pay that. And you won't know it until it comes to final closing and you get the statement of adjustments from the builder. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're acting for a buyer on an assignment. The builders now, they automatically, and they have the right to do that in the agreement, automatically void the rebate. So your guy would have to close, pay the extra $24K. After closing, he has to make the application, sends the application into CRA, takes 6 to 8 weeks to get the money back. So they'll get the money back, but not everybody's got $24K lying around. And when you find out 5 days before closing or 3 days before closing, they can't come up with the money. Now we're in a quandary. And I've had this discussion with builders over and over. They say, Greg, because it's an assignment, because Revenue Canada is now getting involved, we don't police that. Our original contract stands as it was. The new stuff, they're responsible. We don't want anything to do with it.
So if the new agreement, the assignment is based on $500,000.
Yeah.
So the HST will be calculated based on the 500,000 or the 400,000?
400,000 HST is included because it's with the builder. The HST, if it says that the buyer is responsible, if it says all in, then the buyer will be paying 13. On closing, nobody's going to collect it. It's when Revenue Canada comes looking, they're going to want 13% of the 100,000.
Yes, but on closing,
no,
the builder will close on based on 400,000.
That is correct. That is correct. Builder has nothing to do with. Now, to make things even more complicated, because this stuff is like, it metamorphosizes. They come up with stuff, and it's all Revenue Canada. They come up with stuff all the time. This particular change has only happened to me twice. It started last year, and it's not become very popular with the builders, so it's not being enforced. But what's happened is, because Revenue Canada lost close to $300 million in uncollected tax on assignments, they decided that they were going to go to the builders and say to them, any assignments, you consent, so you know there's an assignment. You got a copy of it, right? So now it's your job, they say to the builder, to get a copy of the assignment agreement. We want to know what it was sold for. We want to know who the original buyer is. We want to know who the new buyer is. And on top of that, see this $100,000 profit in our example here? That gets paid through the builder's lawyer. So the builder's lawyer takes in all of the money at 500, like you were asking. The adjustments remain the same. There's no extra, but they now back out the HST out of the $100,000 profit and send me a check for the net. Because Revenue Canada has gone to these guys and said, if you don't do that, and this guy walks away, because how you can imagine how many assignments are going, how do you find individuals? So CRA said, we can't worry, we don't have the manpower to go after everybody who's done an assignment and have to get paperwork and audit them, blah, blah, blah. So you know what, we'll go to the source. We'll go to the builders. And the builder is responsible. So they get a list They know what the assignment is, they know who the assignees are, and they know what the purchase price is, and they know what the profit is. So it's only happened twice, and I do a lot of real estate. So when they first came out, they were all hot and heavy. I was talking to a bunch of the guys at the big development firms. They said, oh, this is the way it's gonna go. We've written memoranda to all of our clients, like big builders. And they're buddies of mine. So I said to him, and what's happening? He goes, well, most of these guys don't want to get involved. They're saying that it's going to screw up the price. People are going to not be able to afford it. They're not going to want to do a sign. They felt that it would have a negative impact on their sales. So they've sort of backed away. He said to me, I don't care. I gave him the memorandum. So when Revenue Canada comes in and goes after them, that's their problem. Again, a cover your ass letter. He says, I'm just going to pull out the memorandum and say, you remember when I sent you that thing and we discussed it, you told me to take a hike? No. I'll deal with the HST. What do you want from me? Sam.
My question is about capital gain. I have 2 units, both of them assigned, maybe 2 months of each other. Both of them, the profit is capital gain or business?
Capital gain.
Both of them?
Yep, both of them should have capital gains. The government, what he's talking about is what's happening now, again, our friends at the Fed, they're trying to get rid of capital gains and make everything income. So whereas any sale of property used to be a capital gain and taxed at a lower rate, they're saying that if you sell, like he's got 2 of them, right? Some people have 3 or 4. They're coming back and saying, oh, that's not capital gains. You're in the business of selling. This is a business. So this is business income, not capital gains. Business income is taxed up here, capital gains is taxed down here, you understand?
How is that determined?
If you do it over and over, see, like he's an agent, right? He's got 2 of them and he's gonna sell, boom, boom, right? They're gonna turn around and say, yeah, you're an agent, you bought them, you assigned them, you sold them, that's a business.
Is that also part of that once a year you can flip?
No, where did you hear that? That once a year you can flip?
Well, sometimes what happens that we had that conversation where the person puts as a principal home.
Yeah.
So would that be?
No, because.
Assignment, it is not occupancy.
No.
No, that's right.
What you're saying is where you try to kite the buy and the sell.
Yeah.
So you're living in a place, you buy another place, and then you're gonna move into the new place and say that that's your principal residence, but you're still stuck with the other property. They give you a grace period to get rid of the other one, okay? But you can't take forever and you have to have it on the market.
So you say that any assignment is part of, is now income?
That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it income instead of capital gains. That's what's happening.
When you're talking about the builder's lawyer having to hold that 13%, right? So are we now talking about 3 solicitors being involved? You have your signer's lawyer, you've got the builder's
Always on
lawyer.
assignment, you have 3 lawyers.
Okay. So it has to go, so even the profit.
Goes through the builder's lawyer. That's what they want to do.
But that's not happening now.
No,
Right
it's
now,
only
the
happened,
$100,000 is
it has
going to the
happened in 2,
signer.
it has happened in 2 instances.
How long do you make it conditional upon the builder's?
Consent?
Yeah.
15 days. To be on the safe side. Some of them are really bad. I mean, you can make it for 5 days, you can make it for 10 days, and then be prepared to get, an extension. People are gonna start getting nervous, but some of these builders, they don't care. It's like, yeah, whenever, I'll get to it.
You don't have a template of recommended clauses you.
No, I've never sat down to make a template. I should.
Sorry, just regarding the conditional period, so you're saying for builder's consent allow about 15 days?
I would put down 15 days,
So
but
you
that
don't
makes
need to ask
people,
for extensions.
right, that's it.
Okay,
So
perfect.
15 days or sooner. If you get it sooner, it's done, you're done. Otherwise, you have to keep going back. I need another 5 days. I need another 5 days. It starts to become annoying.
It's annoying, it totally is. So what about the solicitor review? Do you say that for after the builder's consent is given, or do you do them simultaneously?
It all depends. I mean, it's hard to say. A lawyer shouldn't need more than 5 days to review an assignment, to review anything really. And you can make it that a lot of lawyers won't even review the consent because the builder won't give you the consent before it's signed. So sort of a little too late. The builder won't give you some of them have given them to me, and I'll read them right because I'm trying to customize the clauses.
Right.
so that I can carry over some incentives or whatever, I'll say to the agent, you gotta get a copy of the blanket consent so that I can take a look at it. But otherwise, builders don't normally, because they say, you know what, take it as it is. Consent is the consent, you take it as it is. And they won't. So I would just make it conditional on for 5 days before you get the consent.
Even before, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
not after.
Yeah, and it doesn't take that long to review. I mean, I shouldn't say that, because like I said, like I premised from the beginning, a lot of lawyers won't even do assignments. They're terrified, and they don't understand them.
Of course.
So you have to tell somebody says, oh yeah, I've got my lawyer. Say, okay, but ask the lawyer if they're schooled in assignments. This is not normal,
It's true.
right? So it all depends on the lawyer.
Would you deal with the original paperwork on Schedule A, like asking for the original agreement, anything about parking, like we would have surveyed and
Yeah, you could put it in. I mean,
Like, you
any
must provide it?
agent who's acting for an assignor should have a copy of the original agreement in their possession
Yeah.
when they come to you and you say, I have an offer for you. Okay, but before it gets signed, I need to see the agreement. You don't need to put that in writing.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't ask for it as a coming after you've agreed to it. You want to see it before.
And so what if like parking spots or lockers are deeded separately, like?
Oh, but it should all be in the
all
original agreement.
Okay.
Even if you bought a parking space or a locker after the original, there'll be an amendment saying that you bought a locker for $8,000. Yeah, so it's all together.
I know there's a fee that the builder charges to do the assignment.
Yep.
How is that fee calculated?
It's all up to them. Could be $5,000, could be $25,000,
But it's
whatever they
usually
like.
given. It's usually given at the beginning.
Not anymore.
Oh, really?
Not anymore. A lot of them will give, what they do now is they'll give a free assignment and they don't and then after that, they don't specify it, right? But I understand, yeah, they used to say 5,000, they don't, a lot of them are getting away from that. A lot of them are saying that they'll give an assignment and that it's to be determined. And a lot of the assignment clauses today are phony. It shows that they're giving you the assignment, then when you read the entire clause, they're taking it away because it's impossible for you to fulfill the conditions to get the assignment. So, and that's how they collect their money.
So typically it's the assignor that pays for that.
Absolutely. Now, having said that, another important thing that you have to put into the agreement, which a lot of agents miss, you need to have a closing date. People miss that on the occupancies. So is your guy, normally what ends up happening is that if they're in occupancy, you choose the next, well, you have to choose a date that's fair for everybody. If they're in occupancy, you choose a date usually at the beginning of a month to try to make things, because of being an occupancy or whatever. But put in a date. Because a lot of the stuff comes and has no dates.
Isn't there a closing date on here?
But it'll be TBD, right? If you're not in occupancy,
Oh,
right, you have to specify that it will occur on the date of occupancy approved or provided for by the builder. You have to put that in. You have to have a closing date.
The date of occupancy is not a closing date.
No, it's a closing date for the assignment. It's for when this is going to be.
But doesn't that contradict the fact that you said you only reminded all the money to the seller prior?
No, but that's what, so in that clause, some of them will say, we want the balance of the money in occupancy. See? But you have to have a date of closing, because what'll end up happening is, to piggyback on that, you have to specify in a clause, who's paying for the occupancy fees, right? So, let's say that I'm in occupancy. I come into occupancy on the 1st of March, right? I'm doing an assignment deal with you, and your guy doesn't want to close until the 1st of May. So I'm paying occupancy, right? So I'm going to turn around and say, well, I'll give you the 1st of May, but your guy has to pay the occupancy fees from 1st of March. Or I'll pay the occupancy fees until the 1st of May, but after that, it's all on you. You have to specify that. I know it sounds dumb, like, I mean, if I'm taking occupancy, I should be, but that's not the way it works. If I don't agree in the assignment that I'm going to be responsible for occupancy fees, then I'm not responsible for occupancy fees. So I'm going to take occupancy and you're going to keep paying, because I never agreed. I said, yeah, I'll take occupancy on May 1st, but I didn't say I was going to pay the occupancy fees. So you have to specify that.
So closing date on this is normally the closing day of the occupancy date? Or-
Normally, yes, normally.
Isn't it in the original contract?
There's no date in the original contract. There's a carry-on date, which is best guess. You can't use that.
Yeah.
You have to try to negotiate a date between the two parties involved. And if it's in occupancy, it's easy to pick a date. But like I said, I just gave you the example, I want to take, I have my house up for sale, or I'm renting until the 1st of May. I don't want to have to pay rent and pay occupancy, so this is where this comes in. You have to specify what the occupancy, the closing date is going to be on this assignment.
And it's Schedule A?
Yes, the schedule it. And on top of the fact that the assignee is going to be responsible for occupancy fees from such a date, you also have to put in that the assignee will be responsible to pay all the builder's closing costs. And believe me, on a condo, it's a list of 10 to 15.
So where am I
So
gonna
you're-
get those clauses from? If you can't get a template from you?
You know what, email me
Okay.
to remind me, if and when I get a chance, I'll try to put them together. My days are,
So how does it go? So if I have a property that I'm a listing agent.
Mhm.
I get an offer on the property,
Mhm.
it's an assignment.
Yeah.
How do I know if all those clauses that you say should be in there have been written properly?
conditional on solicitor's review. Huh, That's what all my agents do.
Okay.
Sometimes I walk around and say, but I do more real estate, like reviewing stuff than, like, the agreements just pile, it's next to impossible to get. But that's, the safest way is do what you can if you don't have a template. Even if you have a template, not all lawyers like to do the same. So you say conditional on solicitor's review. Let the guy take it to his lawyer, 5 days, guy can review it, make his notes, whatever, and away you go, you're off the hook.
How do you feel about having a clause in there about obtaining builder's consent given them 15 days, and then upon solicitor's review, after receiving builder's consent for 5 additional days, or something like that?
You could put that in, but you may never get the consent to have it reviewed. And the builder may balk at that. The builder may turn around and say, no, we're not giving you 5 days to review our consent. Our consent is our consent, period. Take it or leave it. We're not making any changes to this consent. The only time, like I said, that I ask for that is when there's incentives built into the agreement, and I want to try to get them to agree to give some of those incentives, then I ask. But normally, consent comes to me already signed. Yeah.
So when you say we put a closing date?
The closing date should be, you specify the closing date in Schedule A. Yeah. Because I don't think there's a place here for, there wouldn't be. Irrevocability. I don't believe there is one, so you do have to put it, that's why I said you have to specify a closing date. There has to be a closing date to the assignment.
And is the irrevocability still like 2 weeks beforehand on this? Like,
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with. That's negotiable. It's whatever you happen to be comfortable with. Whatever makes the deal work, right? So, I mean, if your guy really wants the place and, there's 10 other offers and, you gotta get it done, then your guy's gonna have to put up with no conditions or, 1 day or no solicitor's review because you got 10 people.
no, sorry, wasn't clear on the irrevocability here. Is
What you would normally do.
Yeah.
Normal.
So what is occupancy expenses?
The monthly, what I call rent. So when you close a condominium, they give you possession. It's a 2-stage closing, right? So they give you possession of the unit, but not transfer of title. During the possession period, could be 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever, you have to pay the builder a check. The check is comprised of the interest rate on the phantom mortgage. So on the mortgage that they're fronting you, because you can't get a mortgage, 1/12 of the estimated property taxes and your maintenance fees. So it's $1,600 a month. You got to make sure that the guy who's moving in or taking possession of it is going to be responsible for that.
So if it's during occupancy and they have paid a few months, can we calculate that, or is that?
No, that's gone. If the assignor has paid it, the assignor has paid it. He was in possession, and so he's paid it. Now it's, you negotiate going forward, right? When does the assignee take over paying those things? Yeah.
What type of costs did you mention upon closing once you take?
There's every condo, I get this question all the time. It's impossible for me to tell you. Every agreement is different, especially with the levies that they're putting in. You're looking at, like Charisma, for example, 2-bedroom is over $20,000 over and above purchase price.
At the end.
Yeah, because they charge you, the lot levy is capped at $12,000. So right away, for a 2-bedroom, you're at 12. Then they have boulevard this and hydro hookup and deposits. It's a list from here to Kingdom Come. You cannot, I always tell people, put 20 grand in your head, might be way more than what you need, or it might be a little less than what you need. But as long as you're prepared for that, but that's the way it is. And you saying that, for example, you gotta really read, so you know what Charisma did? So I'm the one who gets most of these agreements as soon as the condos open. I get 40 or 50 of them. So I'm the first one to look at it and tell people, like when Icona came in and all of that stuff. So Charisma, and a lot of lawyers didn't catch it because I talked to agents who sent them to other lawyers and said, well, that was never specified. They capped the levies, okay? But they only capped the levies to December 31st, 2017. So there's no cap there. There's no cap.
What does that mean?
Well, so levies are payable based on what the municipality charges you, right? Okay, so our favorite thing as lawyers is to cap the levies to the day of closing, so it can't be more than 5,000, 6,000, whatever it is, right? So what they did in Charisma was they wrote down huge amendment, amendment to the agreement of purchase and sale, capping of levies. So if you read the whole thing, you can't just read capping of levies. If you read the whole thing, it says that the levies, so this $12,000 is only capped for anything that gets charged up to December 31st, 2017. These things don't close till 2020. So all the increases from December 31st, 2017 to whenever you close in 2020, they're not paid for. They're gonna download them to the buyer. So the buyers are gonna walk into my office and they say, okay, you need $40,000 for what? Well, your levies are up $9, $10, $11,000. They're very, that's, for me, that's deceitful. Okay, it's very, very deceitful what they did there. Because when you're looking at it, if you don't really pick it up, you're like, okay, they're capped. So the caps are, 9,000 and 12,000, which is what normally most people do. Like, I just had a client brought me in one from On The Go and one from Charisma. So I just wanted to go through it and do the levies. And I explained to her, On The Go, they're capped. They're capped until the thing closes. It's $2,500, they're capped. I said, but on this one, and she goes, what do you mean? I said, on this one, there is no, so I wrote to Herr Schaefer, and I said to them, guys, blah, blah. They wrote back and said, nope, take it or leave it. We're not making any more, our client has agreed to cap, and we're not making any more adjustments. And your client agreed to cap till 2017. What good is that to my client? That's useless. But I said to her, I said, one is like this, one is like this. I said, you decide what you want to do.
Does that work the same, like in subdivisions when it's like detached homes?
Not really. Detached homes are a little different. There is the levies, but normally they cap them and they cap them. But I mean, I'll be honest with you, this is the only time that I saw this done this way. So I don't know what they were up to. I don't know why they did it that way. Because most of the ones that I've read, they cap it and they cap it until it's closed.
So question about land transfer tax, the assignee pays,
Yep.
do they pay the original price?
Yep.
Then?
Yep.
Okay, so there's no.
No additional.
Okay, on top of the new.
No.
Purchase, okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. I gotta back up. No, the land transfer tax is payable on the new price. Sorry.
Okay.
But, no. Not this, okay, so let me explain something. It's payable on the new price, but when the builder gives you transfer of title, they don't transfer it to you at the new price. They transfer it to you at the original price. So yes, your buyer, your assignee only pays on the old price. on the original price, because that's all that the government sees. I don't put in $500,000. But technically, your guy, even though on closing is only paying on the 400 on the original price, the government could come back and say to them, you bought this by way of assignment, you owe us land transfer tax on the additional $100,000.
Right, so they should be prepared to pay
Correct.
that difference
Correct.
should it come.
But when the agreement comes, when the transfer comes from the builder, it's got the original price in it. I have to go in and manipulate the land transfer tax affidavit and literally collect the extra money.
So you do,
You're supposed to, I don't do it, but you're technically, Revenue Canada is entitled to that extra money.
and then they get it back.
No,
No,
not land transfer tax,
That, on that difference,
no,
assignee.
no.
So it shows on the statement of adjustments.
It shows what the statement of adjustment is going to have the original purchase price. Unless, like I told you, the builders start doing what I said to you, where they actually collect the top up. If you're dealing with a builder's lawyer that actually collects the top up, now in that case, the guy pays on the new purchase price because he's got it on his statement of adjustments. They show it. So when they do the transfer to me, when I receive the transfer, it'll have the new price on it. So now you got to pay on the new price. But that's not in use yet. It's not something that the builders are doing. But like I said, it's the same thing. I had this conversation when I was doing another seminar here. There was another lawyer here who said that somebody asked me, when you assign a property, do you pay land transfer tax? And they said, no. When you assign a property, the assignor doesn't have to pay land transfer tax. That's not true. That's not true. People think that a land transfer tax is only payable when a document is registered. It is not true. The law says that anytime that there's a transfer of property, land transfer tax is due and payable. So technically, when your assignor does one of these and assigns it, he's supposed to pay land transfer tax on the $400,000 in our example. Nobody polices it. Nobody's policing it yet. But I can tell you that that is the way it works, 100%. Land transfer tax is, you can barter, you can trade, you can do whatever you want, but there's land transfer tax payable whenever there's a flip of a property. Always remember that. That's the legal, that's the position that the land transfer tax department would take. Have they ever policed it? In my 32 years, I've never seen it. But the way things are going today, they're looking for every opportunity to try to get every last penny out of everybody. And real estate is the golden goose. That's where all their tax money comes from.
I've got a question about, I'm sorry to go back to the HST. I'm just unclear about one issue on that. So it was to do with the credit. Do you mind just going over that one more time? So the HST, we know is included on the original price.
Correct.
So on the 400,000, HST is included. In
That's correct.
When the assignee comes and purchases it for
500,000,
500,000,
yeah.
there's $100,000 difference. So there's $13,000 HST due. The rebate, okay, I've got that
It's got nothing
far.
to do with the rebate.
Okay, I've got that far.
It's got nothing to do with the rebate.
Okay. Can you please tell me what you were talking about with the rebate? Because that's the point where my brain shut off for a second.
Okay.
And then,
So rebates are like this. I've actually going to talk about the rebate. All I had said was that the maximum that you're going to get is $24,000. So let's talk about the HST rebate. So what happens is when you buy new construction, there's HST included. And if you buy the property for your own use that you're going to move in, you get a credit for the rebate on the time of closing. So the builder will charge you the full amount of the HST, and they give you a credit for the $24,000, and that brings you back to your original purchase price, because the purchase price includes a portion of the HST that nobody gets back. You do know that, right? So it's 68% of the HST, 68% of the 13% is embedded in the price that you pay for the house. That's the way it works. So the rebate of $24,000, in most cases now that's all that's left. If you're buying it for yourself and you move in, the builder actually gives it to you on the statement of adjustments. If you buy the house and rent it out, then you're supposed to pay the additional $24,000. And after you close, you make an application and the government sends it back to you. So you get your money back, but you have to come up with it on closing, because that's a special program that the government had for new housing rental rebates. takes about 6 to 8 weeks. A lot of my guys rent out, and they always ask me this question, should I tell them? My position is, tell them. Tell them, come up with the extra money, close, and then get it back. Because if you don't, what'll end up happening is that immediately that $24,000 starts running with penalty and interest. Before you get to it, to get it all figured out, because they'll assess you. Once they assess you, there's about a $3,000 or $4,000 interest penalty. I can do the paperwork to get back the initial $24,000, but they never waive the interest and penalty. Okay, so I always tell them, be honest. Now they say, oh, I can't come up with the $24,000. I said, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to get away with it from the builder. So we're not gonna tell the builder that it's rented out. If you can get away with it and I get the credit on closing, we take it, we close. I then tell the client to immediately file a supplemental rebate with the government. So you admit that you shouldn't have got it and it was an error. My place is rented out. I didn't move in. I didn't realize. My lawyer didn't explain it to me. I don't know. But I'm coming clean saying that I wasn't entitled to that $24,000 on closing. I am entitled to the $24,000 because it's rented, but I wasn't entitled to it on closing. So when you send in that package, right, they immediately open up a file and do their thing. Then they'll send you an assessment saying, we received your package, thank you very much. You got 24, you owe us 24, but you're entitled to 24, so it washes itself out, okay? Except for a small portion of penalty and interest. It'll be $500 or $600, but you didn't have the money to close. So it works that way. You got to think outside the box. You always got to think outside the box. So I've done that for a number of clients who are on the fence, I don't have, and then after they close, they say, you know what, you're right, let me do the application. So they do the application, and everything's a wash except for, a minuscule penalty. But I mean, the penalty's worth it because you wouldn't have had the money to close to begin with. There would have been all kinds of other problems. So those are your 3 scenarios.
Do you do that kind of application?
I do, but I'm expensive because it's annoying and I don't have time to do it. So I'll tell when things are annoying, I overprice them so that people don't get me to do them. Unfortunately, they make me do them anyway. I charge $1,000 to do it. They're all done perfectly. Everybody gets their money.
So in the scenario,
but that's what I charge.
So in the scenario that the place is rented out, you're saying you just come here, you claim that, sorry, I made a mistake, I rented it out, but the government said, okay, you rented it out, you're entitled to take it back, just pay me the penalty and get it.
That's right.
Is there a max to this rebate?
24,000. It used to be more, but the HST is made up of the federal and the provincial portion. Provincial portion maxes out at 24, and everybody gets it. The federal portion was based on another calculation, but anything over 450 wipes it out completely. There is no cap. So you used to get a maximum of $6,300 from the feds, $24,000 from the province for $30,000. Okay, $30,300 was the maximum. It doesn't exist anymore. That's why we always use 24,000 now, because that's all you're going to get. I mean, what are you going to buy for less than $400,000? You might find the odd thing, but not new construction. So, any other questions?